Hey guys, here we are for a short track guide of the NASCAR Xfinity Series car at Dover Speedway for the second round of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. Now for this track guide, I'm going to show you my outlap and hot lap first, and then I'm going to analyze my lap in slow motion, as well as give a bunch of tips on how to approach this track. Before we get to the track guide, let's review the settings that I'm using. For this lap, I'm using a steering ratio of 14 to 1, steering offset of 12 degrees, and a brake bias of 63%. Now let's get on to the outlap. Now one thing I want you to look for during my outlap is just how slowly I get up to speed so I don't burn up my tires before I get to the hot lap. Okay, now let's look at the lap in slow motion. So as we exit the pits here, you can see that I'm using only about half throttle around the apron here, which means that I'm not going to be sliding the tires. And also, even before I get up onto the banking, or onto the track, I already shift up to fourth gear, which means I'm not going to be doing like any burnouts in the lower gears just as we get up to speed here. So just making sure to be smooth on the throttle coming out of the pits, and also shifting up to fourth real early as we start our lap. Heading into 3 and 4 to start our lap, one thing that I'm focusing on is to turn down as late as possible so we can straight line our exit. So you can see it's really easy to just turn down right now and then hit the apron like right around like this pit line. I'm trying to cut down really late, getting back to full throttle and clipping like the curve right around here. And then you can see all I need to do is just unwind the wheel, keep the throttle pinned, and that allows me to get to the finish line to start our lap as fast as possible. Heading into turn 1, we're staying right against the wall, trying to get as wide of a turn in as possible. We're going to be letting off just as the pit wall disappears from our view, so you can see back to 0% right there. And the focus is just about letting the car try to slide, getting that rotation early on, and then eventually it's going to slide back up due to that loss of grip. And then as soon as it's basically at its highest point, getting back to partial throttle right here, really easy to start getting a lot of oversteer on exit. You can see I'm just trying to maintain around 75% to 80% throttle, trying to hug the curbing right here. As soon as that rear end's starting to slide, trying to do a small counter steer right there. Once again, keeping it at full throttle, trying to make the small counter steers, and getting right up against this outside wall. You can see the rear of the car getting right up against it, but just avoiding it, just avoiding that 0x, really easy to get. Once again, going down the backstretch right here, very similar approach into turn 3, except there is a small bump on entry, which you gotta be cautious of, basically right under the shadow. As you dip down, you can see that bump, the car just unsettles a bit, and that allows your car to kind of slide up even further than it would in 1 and 2. So you're gonna end up taking like about half a car length wider of a line through here, around 75% to 80% like throttle maintenance, and then once again trying to apex, very similar point to where we did on that outlap. Again, it's kind of hard to get to that curbing, and on this particular occasion, we slid a bit more than we wanted to, trying to avoid the outside of the car getting into the wall, but that counter steer just to avoid it. And we probably lost a hundredth of a second just making that counter steer coming to the line, and that's a 23.5. So now I'm just going to show some common mistakes that are easy to make here, and what you should do to avoid them. So this is a very common mistake to make, and I'm going to show you how to avoid something like this. So if we just watch on board here, we can see that we are trying to bring the car down from like the second lane down to the first lane, and we're getting back to full throttle a bit too soon. And so what happens, we think we're going to understeer, so we put in more throttle. Now we're oversteering. We try to correct, and the car is just about to spin out. So one of the ways to avoid this is just to change your steering ratio. If you're using a 16-to-1 ratio and you move it down to a 14-to-1, that means you have to use less steering to get the same amount of wheel rotation, and so you can make micro adjustments much easier. So I would say in order to avoid spinning out at turn 2 or just getting that over rotation, I generally would lower that steering ratio from 16 to 14 or even to 12. Now here's another common mistake and how we should avoid it. So you may think the mistake was actually hitting the wall at a 4, but that was actually due to our entry into 3, so we're going to look at that instead. So as we just go on board here, as we're approaching turn 3, as we turn in, let off the gas, our car is pointing towards this inside line, which is where we want to be. But as we go through the corner, we're kind of sliding up the track, and by the middle of the corner, we're basically in the second lane, almost a lane off the inside. This is where we want to be. So what caused this? If we just stay in chase view here, you can see that as we go into 3, there's actually a bit of a bump here, and you can tell based on the back of the back of the car just lands there and it bounces a bit, and we're kind of just losing grip due to that bump, and so we're expected to slide up. And so how do we avoid getting stuck in the second lane? What we should do is try to adjust our approach to the corner to avoid going there. So instead of angling our car to this inside line, which is basically this area here, I should try to aim for almost this bit here because we are expecting to slide up due to that bump, and so instead of putting us into the second lane, it'll put us just about where we want to be. So you can see sliding up due to that bump, we're now up to here. We want to basically be there instead of in this area. So just by adjusting your line approach to be where you not where you want to be, but where you will be by the middle of the corner based on that bump, that'll put you in a better place because once you're stuck up here, even if you are able to avoid the wall and exit, just cutting down from such a high point in the corner, you're just going to lose a lot of time. So I tried to just take it flat, but I wasn't going to make the corner either way. So sure, the exit didn't look good, but that was due to the entry itself. So once again, just try to adjust your entry, turning in a little bit more than you'd expect to, accounting for the bump that's going to be there. So here's another easy mistake you can make on your outlap and how you should avoid it. So as you can see, we were trying to turn down late in order to get back to throttle really early, but we just clipped this inside curbing, which bounced us wide and into the wall. So once again, we did a good job at trying to turn down late, but you want to get as close to this curve as possible without hitting it. If you hit it, it'll just bounce you right, and you won't be able to get to the line as fast as possible. Instead you'll end up in the wall. So yeah, just be cautious about when you're turning down. Once again, don't turn down too early. You can see I turned down a bit here and then I kind of had to adjust. So stay pretty far wide as long as you can. That way you can turn down, keep the wheel straight, and avoid doing that. Okay, well thanks for watching. Hopefully that track guide was helpful and now you have an idea of what mistakes to try to avoid. And I wish you guys good luck with this combo. It's definitely a fun one, but a challenging one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.